Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman, facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call this afternoon, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening in to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. For those of you that are new to our call, we have a standard format. We like to move quickly, bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people and have a lot of other things on the agenda. So we spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for some of these other currencies. We spend a few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. We're still in the new year, and we still have great expectations for what's to occur in the first quarter. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of these currencies. We're not advocating the sale or purchase of these currencies, but we are sharing with you, as substantial currency holders ourselves, information we think is valuable. First, with regard to the window on the Iraqi dinar, we believe strongly that there could be a reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in the first quarter of this year and possibly prior to February 15th. We think February or mid-February is an important date because a revaluation in the first half of any given quarter gives us time to determine what the tax status of this revaluation will be and gives us additional time to hold the currency as it appreciates further prior to the payment of any tax. Now, as we speak, the issues that are germane with regard to the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in country have to do with the formation of the new government, implementation of Article 140 and the hydrocarbon law, and also compliance with the United States Iranian sanctions. It may seem that they are not necessary, but this is an important component to the reinstitution of the currency. So let's start first and talk about the formation of the new government. There is scheduled for this week parliamentary votes on the confirmation of the two outstanding ministers, the defense and interior ministers. This, of course, is not a good thing, but worst case scenario, let's assume that on the short term they are simply unable to confirm any nominee of a Mahdi for the Minister of Defense or Interior. I do not believe that this would in any way postpone either the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in country or result in a non-confidence vote for the new Prime Minister Mahdi. So again, while we want to see those two seats confirmed, I do not see the failure to confirm those two ministerial seats as a deal breaker for the reinstitution of the eminent reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in country. The other issue is the implementation of Article 140 of the Constitution. It's been kind of buried over the last year or so, but it still is a very important component. It basically is the repatriation of Kurds back to Kurdistan. Remember, they were expatriated by force by Saddam Hussein, and he allowed the Sunnis to move in, and of course that process is being reversed. Now, the 2019 budget does provide 50 billion dinar to fund the repatriation of the Kurds, so that's an important component with regard to the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. There are still, unfortunately, negotiations going on for the fair distribution of the oil revenues pursuant to the hydrocarbon law, but I do not think that that will be a problem for the reinstitution either, simply because if they remain at loggerheads over the distribution of those revenues, those funds will simply go into escrow until it's been resolved. So that should be something that's off the table long term. Now, as to the 2019 budget that I've just mentioned, it has been enhanced by the recent increase in the price of a barrel of oil. you have to remember that 90% of the revenues to fund the Iraqi budget comes from the sale of petroleum. So an increased price in a barrel of oil increases their revenues. Additionally, these revenues will allow for the funding, finally, of the reconstruction of the national electric power grid. Now, that grid was basically destroyed all the way back in 2003, and a lot of the frustration of the Iraqi nationals had to do with the fact that the grid, the electrical grid and water was completely destroyed by the removal of Saddam Hussein, and then, of course, postponed further with ISIS in the area as well. So the resolution of those issues is critical. And that brings us to the last issue, which is pretty important, and that is compliance with the Iranian sanctions. Now, the United States, out of necessity, has granted Iraq a 90-day exemption from the international sanctions on Iran. Iraq and Iran have a sort of a symbiotic, dysfunctional, for lack of a better description, bad marriage relationship. Iraq is in desperate need of the Iranians' natural gas in order to replace the lost electricity from the destruction of their electrical grid. Iran, because of the draconian sanctions placed on them by the United States, desperately needs Iraq as a customer for their natural gas. The United States does not want Iraq to be dealing with Iran, certainly long term, but they understand short term, until that electric power grid is reconstructed, that they're going to need that natural gas from Iran. What's going to happen over the next 60 days, which is what remains in that 90-day exemption window, is that the Iraqi CBI is going to have to replace the purchase of that natural gas with Iraqi dinar rather than utilizing the U.S. dollar or the euro. So what's going to happen is the CBI is going to have to eliminate the use of the U.S. dollar. And in order for the Iraqi dinar to be a viable currency to purchase not only Iranian natural gas, but also the international contracts for the rebuilding of their infrastructure, is going to be the gradual increase in the value of the Iraqi dinar. So when you put all of this together, what it basically seems to show us is that the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar is not only possible, but it's probable in the first quarter for a lot of practical reasons. And again, I'll state, compliance with the Iranian sanctions is something that the United States is going to demand of Iraq. Not only that they not use the U.S. dollar or the euro for the purchase of natural gas, but frankly that they have no dealings whatsoever with Iran. And the only way to wean them off of the Iranian influence is for the reinstitution of their currency and their ability to do business globally with other nations, not only in the region, but around the world. So that's basically the information we have for today. It's all good news. Things are moving incrementally. They're moving slowly. I know they're moving a lot slowly than we would like, but everything is moving in the right direction. And while I do believe that the revaluation will occur in the first quarter, there is a distinct possibility it could happen within the first half of the first quarter, and that would be very good for us, again, from an exchange standpoint and from a tax standpoint. Now, having said this means that the time left in order to get your affairs in order prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies is waning. And Trusts Unlimited has a turnkey program in place to assist you. So those of you that have not as yet gotten your affairs in order or may not understand what that involves, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place. It is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts Post-RV involves all of the product, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of these currencies. So let's start with phase one, which is the establishment of your pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Very simply, a trust is a legal instrument one can establish to hold, to manage, and to protect assets. Trusts can fall into some basic categories. For example, the trust can be revocable or it can be irrevocable. In order to have the asset protection you're going to need and want, you are going to need to establish a package of irrevocable trusts, and that package must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for the following reasons. First, by establishing this asset protection trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within an irrevocable trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this pre-RV asset protection trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Now, such an audit will be time-consuming, it will be frustrating, and frankly, it will probably cost you more than the cost of an asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your trust is in place and your currencies are assigned on paper to that trust product, you have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for two reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation occurs within the trust. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the lump sum after you've done the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But in the event that you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, we have established within our trust package a special gift subtrust. It's an exclusive trust created by Trusts Unlimited. By gifting through this gift subtrust, you will be able to successfully avoid the 40% federal gift tax. The language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through this subtrust, not only will their currency be protected along with yours, but you will then be able to invest, manage, and distribute the money to those individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I will give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. That estate must now go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. That could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax, the tax that the federal government will assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Scenario number 2, you purchase $5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. And the day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million, but this time in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The 5th reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase $5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust package. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth. And a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have very deep pockets and a very strong case, because this trust package is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. Second, and most importantly, pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, once this prospective plaintiff learns that the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be the pre-RV value of $5,000, the value of the currency at the time you transferred it to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This asset protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it works. Again, we'll use the same example. You purchase $5 million dinar, transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for additional cash flow and tax write-off, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, why is this important from an asset protection point of view? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. Now, in that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And most importantly, all of your other assets are safely protected in other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue the assets owned by those separate legal entities. So your trust package works very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, a holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of these currencies. Now, I'll just make mention of one of them here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages. In addition, many of our clients have expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is by the transfer of funds directly from your asset protection trust to these newly formed entities. Present at that seminar will also be our tax specialists. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate future taxes on the reinvested dollars from the net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. It's going to be important for you to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 or 5 years due to mismanagement, inexperience, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So it's going to be important to get your money out of the bank and at work in other markets. And third, the general global shift from fiat-based to commodity-based currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want to have a substantial portion of your holdings in tangible assets. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust, which will hold your assigned pre-RV currencies, and then financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts after the revaluation of those currencies. One optional gift subtrust if you wish to gift currencies to family and friends and manage that money post-RV, which gift subtrust can be converted to a standard subtrust to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc., and 8 additional standard subtrusts. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But several years back when we decided to work with denarians, we knew that that price tag was going to be unaffordable for too many. So by restructuring that trust package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's simply not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for establishing their trust pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be less than the $100 a month you'd be paying us under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place for all of the reasons that I've stated here. Now, we will be going to the Q&A in just a moment, but before we do, and again for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. It's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control that you've lost it. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are large investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. Again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to the call. We're going to go to the Q&A in just a moment. When we do, for the benefit of our newer callers, you may want to have a paper and pencil handy because I'm going to give you our contact information. If the things we've discussed with you today are of interest, you may want to get our initial package. It has a lot of information about us, about the revaluation, about trusts in general. It has everything you need if you should decide to establish a trust to protect your assets. However, you're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever from getting this package. We're happy to provide this information to you. In addition, after reviewing the package, if you have questions, you can either contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, and there will be no consultation fee. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We take no service calls. Any existing client can contact us again by phone or email if they have issues. And by the way, I have a number of individuals I'll be speaking with that are in the process of getting their trusts completed, and I will be speaking to each and every one of you this afternoon. Second rule, for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give our newer callers our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon with the exception of the last 2 digits. Rather than dialing 40, you'll dial 39 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out periodically, pre-RV, but after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies, emails may go out as often as daily. So let's go ahead and go to the Q&A. Our first caller here is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead.
Ding, 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 ding. It's Les. I win again.
Yeah, there you go. How you doing, Les?
Hey, Jim. I'm good. How are you?
Okay. What's up, my
Great.
friend?
Fox News just had an announcement about Mike Pompeo. I may not be doing his name any justice, but what's his position in the U.S. government, and why would he be in the Iraqi parliament telling those people over there to grow up?
Well, remember, Pompeo is Secretary of State, and as I alluded to, the problem is that in order for the United States Treasury to sanction the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, Iraq has to simply separate itself from Iran. Iran is the problem. They're a bad influence in Iraq. They're continuing with their hegemony in the Middle East, and Iraq has been given a 90-day exemption from the sanctions, but as we're coming to a close there, the United States does not want Iran to have U.S. dollars or Euro dollars, which it can then use to purchase items to continue in their bad behavior, and Iraq has to be a standalone. So basically what Pompeo is telling them, that once again, is it's time to fly the nest, and remember that the majority of Iraqis are, in fact, Shia. Now, most of them are moderate Shia. They're not radical 12th Imamers like Iranians, but they had a very, very bad experience with Saddam Hussein and the Sunni minority, and then, of course, ISIS was Sunni as well, and the Kurds don't get along particularly well with Sunni or Shia. But in order for Iraq to be a modern, diverse, self-sustained nation-state, they simply have to separate themselves from the world's largest sponsor of terror, and that's Iran. And that's what Pompeo's dealing with.
Okay, so if Iran is providing the electricity for the country of Iraq, how can they separate themselves?
Well, 2 ways. Number one, the increased revenues that they're receiving from the increased oil and petroleum globally is the money they need to rebuild their infrastructure and their electrical grid. Number 2, even if they continue to purchase natural gas from Iran, by the reinstitution of their currency, they can utilize the dinar rather than the U.S. dollar or the or the euro. Basically, what the United States is saying, your currency is not going to revalue until you separate yourself from Iran. Now, remember, their reserve of U.S. dollars and the euro is dwindling, so they don't have an unlimited supply of those currencies and other reserve currencies. Basically, Pompeo is correct. They need to grow up, and they're fighting like children in a sandbox over the toys. So it's unfortunate that that's happening, but we're dealing with a tribal culture. We're dealing with a sectarian situation, dealing with Sunni, Shia, and Kurds, and that in a nutshell is what they need to do: grow up.
Okay, so if they only need to revalue their currency, and their grid is not done for their own electricity, they still have to get the supply of electricity from Iran.
Right, but
until they get their own stuff together. But
if they have a viable currency, they can utilize their own currency to purchase the natural gas, not the U.S. dollar. The United States isn't saying you cannot purchase that. They're saying you can't use the U.S. dollar or the euro. They understand that until the grid is reconstructed, they need the natural gas. But they have the resources to rebuild the grid, and they'll have the currency to purchase the natural gas until then.
Okay, so they don't need both gas and electric? They can get by with just the gas?
The natural gas is what's utilized to produce the electricity.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's a short-term situation. The 90-day exemption was based on a prediction of how long it would take for them to reinstitute their currency so that they could purchase with the dinar rather than the U.S. dollar.
Okay. So Pompeo being over in the parliament today, why is he over in the country? Have you gotten any word as to why he is there and how long he'll be there?
And, of course, remember, a lot of the individuals from the parliament were in the United States last month. What's going on here is the United States is trying to get Iraq over the hump here so that they can reinstitute their currency. So, obviously, that's why they're there, to get things done.
To push. Got it.
Yes.
Okie dokie. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
For taking my call. Say hi to the professor.
Will do. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 931. That's 931. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. How are you today? I got on the call for a while, but I have two questions. One is about the trust. And if you have if you have your trust in place, which I do, and you have it, the currency revalues, and you want to create another trust, for example, you bought a boat with the revalued currency, and you were to get in an accident with that boat, would they be able to sue you with the revalued currency or the pre-valued currency?
The currencies are protected by virtue of the fact that you're in your master trust. If you're going to purchase a boat, what you'll do is you will contact us and say, I'm purchasing a boat, I'm calling it the Queen Anne, and I'd like to create the Queen Anne subtrust. We will create the subtrust within 48 hours. When you purchase the boat, it'll be titled to the Queen Anne subtrust. Therefore, the boat is protected within that subtrust, and the currencies, which are now U.S. dollars, are protected in the master trust. You own neither. The master trust will own the U.S. dollars, and the subtrust will own the boat.
So it'll always refer back to the original $5,000 that you talk about in your conference calls.
Yeah. In other words, the currencies were worth approximately $5,000 when they were transferred to the trust. So that's all you could personally be sued for, because when you divested yourself of that asset within that 5-year period, they were only worth $5,000. So they could theoretically only come after you for $5,000. Well, if you're going to have to pay an attorney a $10,000 retainer to go to Wyoming to sue you to get $5,000, that's a no-brainer. You're not going to do it.
Right. And so it doesn't matter about it's already devalued. You've got $25 million in U.S. currency now. They can't sue you for that on the boat because it goes back to the original $5,000 that you put in to begin with.
Now, suing you for the boat, let's say you had a boat accident. That is a future bad act, all right? So once again, the threshold for suing you in general would be $5,000 because that's what the property was worth when you transferred it to the trust package. But if they sued you because of the issue with the boat, they couldn't go after the assets in the other sub-trusts because under the law those are separate legal entities and they have no standing.
Okay. The other question I've got, Jim, and I missed the first part of the call, so I hope I'm not, doubling up on what you've already said. But
ask away.
My question is, yesterday, I understood that the Parliament came back from a 2-week vacation. They had 2 weeks to either come up with names or delete names that they're not comfortable with, and they came back to the Parliament and they still can't nominate 3 remaining ministers to make their complete, for lack of a word, staff, Congress.
Right. Their cabinet of ministers is not complete. They still have open seats, correct.
Three of them, and after 90 days of this new prime minister, he still can't come up to the plate and say, look, you guys are going to come, because only 80 people showed up yesterday out of all the people that were supposed to be there. And so why is it that he can't come to the plate, be like a body, put it on national TV, expose all the corruption, the people that don't show up, and say this is the reason why we can't get the remaining 3 into the cabinet, because they're not wanting to show up. And the people that are corrupt will be exposed on TV, like Malinky and those kind of creeps, that the goons that don't want to come to the quorum to vote on the last 3 ministers. It sounds like we got a weak prime minister, because it doesn't make any sense why it's taken so long to put 3 more people into the cabinet.
It's true that the prime minister is somewhat weak. It's also true that circumstances being what they are, it would be pretty difficult for anybody. This is, in my opinion, the problem with the parliamentary system to begin with. It operates on coalitions, and they all have different agendas. In other words, they're all one agenda item coalitions, and so it's difficult to get people together to vote on any one thing because they all have different issues, and you can't please everybody. That's the problem. Now, the corruption issue, unfortunately, is rampant, and the problem is if you start locking up the corrupt, then the government doesn't function there either. So, unfortunately, everyone's got to hold their nose and jump, because that's the only way it's going to get done. It's unfortunate, it's dysfunctional, but to be fair, our representative republic is about 235 years old, and if you listen to the news in the United States, we're almost as dysfunctional here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why the founders believed in limited government, because you can't serve 2 masters, and it's a shame that it's that way, but it's the human nature. It's just the way it is, and hopefully these matters will be resolved. They're moving very, very slowly to resolution of these things. You also have to remember that in the United States, deadlines are deadlines, but in the East, in the Eastern culture, particularly tribal cultures, deadlines is just a day to renegotiate. So we're dealing with tribal cultures, we're dealing with sectarian differences, we're dealing with relatively new government after 10 years of an insurgency. It's a mess, and it just takes a lot to clean it up.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of, I believe, once they get the 3 remaining ministers in place, I think we'll have everything set to go to activate this. But and I think that's what they're afraid to do, to get those last 3, because they know once these last 3 come to the on board, it will be over with. It'll go forward, and I think it'll go national, worldwide, and it'll take a little time for the float to take it up. But again, that's just my opinion, and I think that's what they're afraid of.
you might be right about that, but it's my opinion that the Article 140 and the hydrocarbon, the oil and gas law, are even more important. I feel as though if they get everything else done and they end up with 2 or 3 ministerial seats that have not been filled, I do not think there will be a no confidence vote, nor do I think that they will continue to postpone the reinstitution of their currency, because they cannot function after this exemption from the Iranian sanction without their own currency. So, we'll have to see. I mean, I'm not the Oracle of Delphi either, but I hope that gets resolved. But if that's the only thing left on the table, I do not see it postponing the reinstitution of the currency in country.
I see.
We'll
just
have to wait and see.
So there's a possibility that it will go into the no longer, if they have to, into the second quarter of this year.
I don't see that. I mean, anything's possible, but I don't see that scenario as being plausible at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tim. Thank you for your time, and always enjoy talking with you.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call. We hope it's been informative. We hope that those of you calling in for the first time and find what we've had to say of import will contact us to get our initial package. Again, you're under absolutely no obligation whatsoever to do so. It has a lot of important information. You can contact us if you have any questions. There will be no consultation fee. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we will try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.